freed Israeli hostages and their families are sharing heartfelt messages to the Trump administration. For example, Noah Argamani, kidnapped on October 7th alongside her boyfriend, Aventan, or saying, quote, this could be never have happened without you, meaning Trump. And the wife of released hostage Omri Moran thanked the administration for its relentless efforts to bring Omri and the other hostages home. But Israeli leaders warning the fight isn't over yet, and their military will still have to dismantle Hamas tunnels throughout Gaza. There was something like 390 miles of tunnels. How much is actually gone? Mark Dubowitz does a lot of studying in the area, great contacts, and the CEO and context, and the CEO of the Foundation for Defensive Democracies. Mark, first off, about what's going on right now, Hamas is targeting the clan that the IDF has armed and identified as people they could work with in the area. Is that a violation of this treaty?
Yeah, Brian, look, I mean, the IDF has been told to stand down, and Hamas isn't standing down. They're massacring Gazans. So they're in clear violation. They are not disarming, and they haven't returned the bodies of 21 murdered hostages to their families so that their families can give them the proper burial. So we got to hold Hamas accountable because we're letting them violate the ceasefire now. They'll be violating the ceasefire for days, months, and years to come.
So what about these tunnels? I mean, I would say it's like a hurricane and a tsunami hit Gaza at the same time. It's going to be hard enough to rebuild. You can't rebuild and deconstruct those tunnels while you're being shot at by a terrorist group. So what are the chances of the IDF being able to get back in there to blow up these tunnels, or engineers?
So exactly right. I mean, the hundreds of miles of tunnels, and Hamas obviously didn't use those tunnels as bomb shelters to protect Gazan civilians. They used those tunnels to protect terrorists and weapons, and also use them for dungeons where they held Israeli and American hostages. So the IDF has to go in and destroy the remaining tunnels. But this is also the job, according to the Trump peace plan, of this international stabilization force, which would be comprised of soldiers from Arab and Muslim countries and others who are supposed to go in there and disarm Hamas, strip it of its weapons, and also strip it of these terror tunnels, which are actually deadly weapons.
You think they'll be able to do it?
I'm skeptical, Brian. Look, I think at the end of the day, I don't know how many of these soldiers are willing to confront Hamas. I think ultimately it's going to be up to the IDF to do what it's been doing, which is taking the fight to Hamas, destroying these tunnels, and ultimately it's going to be Israel that's willing to fight and die in its own defense. So I'm hoping this international stabilization force does what the Trump peace plan contemplates, but I'm skeptical until I see the commitment from these Arab countries.
All right, and yeah, they need pressure on Hamas. Now, the Trump yesterday, President Trump's task force, they're called. They were just unveiled the new counter-narcotics joint task force in the Southern Command area took out a fifth narcotics boat. They said they killed at least 6. Quote from Truth Social: the strike was conducted in international waters. 6 male narco-terrorists aboard the vessel were killed in the strike. How effective have these strikes been? And what do you think they're doing to stop the flow of drugs into this area and destabilize Maduro?
Yeah, Brian. I mean, as Israel has taken the fight to Hamas and Hezbollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard terrorists, the Trump administration is taking the fight to these narco-terrorists who are responsible for over 100,000 American deaths a year from fentanyl and meth and heroin, cocaine. These are terrorists. These finally are being treated not as a law enforcement problem, but as a problem of counterterrorism. So I'm pleased to see the Trump administration doing this and using military force against these killers of Americans.
I love that the president's paying attention to Central and South America. He's telling Argentina, this is a friendly government. We need to kick out China, and we need them as an ally. Let's do it and give them an opportunity. I love what he did with the Panama Canal, and I love that he's not accepting that Maduro lost 70-30 in an election and stayed in power. And that's not okay, as he allies with Cuba, Russia, Iran, and China. So the president's got his hands everywhere, especially in our hemisphere. Mark, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
7 deceased hostages have been released from Hamas custody and have been identified, but the bodies of 21 people, including 2 American citizens, are still in Hamas hands. And President Trump is demanding the terror group release them and permanently disarm. The president writing on Truth Social, all 20 hostages are back and feeling as good as can be expected. A big burden has been lifted, but the job is not done. The dead have not been returned as promised. Phase 2 begins right now. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus is a former IDF spokesperson and now a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and he joins me now. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for being here. We understand that you're standing in front of Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is the site of such devastation and destruction at the hands of Hamas on October 7th. And because Hamas has not released all of the bodies yet, yesterday Israel reduced the amount of aid flowing into Gaza and decided not to reopen the Rafah border crossing. So with that in mind, do you believe that this ceasefire will hold?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me on. Just following on the previous item, as an Israeli civilian, I would strongly endorse that effort by Speaker Johnson on behalf of millions of Israelis, ordinary people. They definitely believe that President Trump should be rewarded that prize and many others, because what we enjoyed 2 days ago was getting our brothers and sisters back. That was a tremendous achievement, and we're now in a ceasefire. That would not have happened without President Trump and his team. We understand that, we recognize it, and I hope that the truth and justice will be served and President Trump will be awarded that. Now to the situation on the ground, I think we are at the first test of how strong the metal is in terms of Israel and the U.S. and Hamas is testing the waters here. They're trying to not to release all the bodies of the hostages. Israel so far has responded very softly, and Israel threatened not to open Rafah, but actually the latest news are that Israel is going to open the Rafah gate. I think that's under American guidance and pressure. Because I don't think that Israel wants to really disrupt the ceasefire quite yet. What Hamas is doing is playing for time. And I think that President Trump's tweet saying that, I'm not going to tolerate any games is exactly the type of leadership that is needed, because if Hamas, if they're given an inch, they will take the whole yard and they will drag out this stage, and they will try to make an inevitable situation where they are de facto rulers on the ground. And that cannot be allowed to happen. If we want peace and if we want something positive here for the future, then Hamas needs to be disarmed and control over the Gaza Strip needs to be taken out of the hands of Hamas. By the way, for the better interest of Palestinians as well.
And on that front, the Times of Israel is reporting that since the ceasefire took effect, Hamas gunmen have actually tightened their grip over Gaza and have killed at least 33 Palestinians who are accused of collaborating with Israel. And some of these videos that have been released, these are public executions that we're talking about. This doesn't appear to be the behavior of a group of people who are planning to relinquish power and authority over the Strip.
You are 100% correct. And what Hamas is doing is settling scores. It isn't against people that have cooperated with Israel. It's against various critics in Gaza. It's against people who are trying to rise up against Hamas's oppression. These are Palestinian Muslims. Yes, nothing Jewish here, and no Mossad agent are being executed, just ordinary Palestinians from rival factions and rival clans. And Hamas is doing what they do best. They are thugs, and they're executing people in town squares in broad daylight, in typical Hamas fashion. Now, I don't know if you've seen it on other news networks. I have not seen this reported in any significant way across most of mainstream media. And I wonder why. Isn't it news when 35 and more Palestinians are executed in cold blood? Or is it not news because it's not Israel's doing? But the fact is that Hamas is not looking like an organization that is ready to disarm, as they have committed to President Trump, and they're not looking as if they're going to hand over peacefully the control over the Gaza Strip. That spells trouble for the continuation of this deal. I hope that Qatar Egypt, and Turkey, the main three sponsors of Hamas, will be told by whoever needs to tell them that the time for games and the time for this type of behavior is long gone. Hamas has lost and they must concede. I hope that will happen for the interest of everybody.
Well, in the short time we have remaining, a big question for you, because these Hamas terror tunnels are another major issue, and the eradication of them is part of the 20-point plan. Logistically, though, Lieutenant Colonel, how do you do that?
It'll take a long time, lots of effort, lots of explosives, and lots of soldiers that do it. This is not something that is going to be done in a short time. Imagine if a contractor was given the assignment of demolishing the New York City metro or subway system. That's the scope of what we're talking about here. These are hundreds of miles of tunnels, and it's going to take time. I hope that it'll be done in the most peaceful and benign way without involving any other casualties. But I fear that it will include fighting. If Hamas is disarmed, it can be done in a peaceful way. If not, then it'll have to be done in a different way, which I hope that we can prevent.
Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
You're very welcome.
Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is here. Wow.
Tough day.
Big day. The president's had a big couple days coming back from the Middle East, and now he's got a meeting with Zelensky. He's going over to South Korea to meet with the Chinese. How much power does the president have at this point?
You know, the president is demonstrating what it means to put America first. He is absolutely tireless. I know somebody made a comment on the plane. You know, he goes on these long trips and these long plane rides, doesn't sleep. He's working throughout those flights, hits the ground running, and gets directly to business. I think it is perfect that the president was successful in striking this historic peace deal, bringing people together who normally, as you said, wouldn't even talk to each other, don't agree on much of anything. But President Trump was able to make sure that on this day, as we memorialize and remember Charlie's love and dedication to peace and to freedom and to caring for others, that this is happening in the midst of President Trump making sure that those 20 hostages were now in the loving embrace of their families, making sure that as this next phase begins, those families who have not been able to welcome their loved ones home will soon be able to bury their loved ones and to say goodbye. I think President Trump is demonstrating exactly why Charlie Kirk worked tirelessly to get him elected, to rally support across the country amongst young people and college students, rising above the normal partisan politics and really talking about freedom and talking about peace, making this connection between us, we the people today, the power being in our hands, all the way back to our Constitution and the vision that our founding fathers had for our country. Charlie Kirk lived that vision, showed that he is a warrior for truth and for freedom, and his words were his weapons as he destroyed lies and really inspired people to think critically, to talk to each other and to treat each other with respect.
How do we sustain that vision that Charlie had? There's a lot of people, vicious, hateful people. You see them attacking us. You see the things they're saying. How do we maintain a level-headedness while these evil forces are out there, still fighting?
You know, Erica Kirk said it really perfectly today of how was it that Charlie was so fearless? How was it that he was so courageous in every debate and in every conversation, even as he was being slammed and you know, the worst of attacks and smears being hurled at him? Charlie was fearless and calm in his strength because that strength came from his faith in God.
Yeah, he had that inner tranquility that...
All the time.
It's special.
All the time. It was really beautiful and inspiring to join him on different college campuses, to see him in action, to get into the mix with him and really to see how he invited people to come to lay down their arguments, especially people who disagreed with him, so that he could engage in that dialogue and show others, hey, this is how it's done.
You used to be a Democrat.
There you go.
I mean, if anybody can listen and change, it's a beautiful thing. Tulsi Gabbard, great to see you. Keep up the great work and keeping us safe.